There are some minor ones for the Cardinals and Royals over the weekend, but we want to start, Will, with the big one. Ronald Acuña tearing the ACL, and apparently it's on the other knee, and so now this is 2 ACL tears that he's had in recent memory in his time with the Braves. So now with how he's trying to recover from that and get back into shape for next year, where does that put him on after injuring that other knee over the weekend?
Yeah, this is interesting because, it is the other knee. It was the right when he was leaping and landed funny. This time he was just taking a secondary lead and being athletic, and just it looked like everything slipped. Just one of those things that happened. He gets the largest secondary lead in all of baseball, which is one of the reasons why he steals so many bases, even though he's actually lost a little bit of speed if you look at the StatCast numbers after his first ACL. So you wouldn't have told from his steal numbers last year in his MVP season. So the great thing is he's done this before. He came back really, really well. So, last time he had not a great 2022. A lot of the discussion was about that he just wasn't confident in the knee, that he'd never had a major injury before, that he didn't know, what it was going to be like when he started running on it, that he didn't feel confident, getting his full power into his swing. Well, he's done that. Is he going to get that back more quickly this time? You would have to think so. We've got the perfect comparable, and that's Ronald Acuña. In baseball, we just don't have very many of these, but almost everybody that's had one, Cardinals fans will remember Adam Wainwright back in, I think it was 2011. He came back fine. His was just an absolute quirk. Corey Seager had one. He's come back fine. Gavin Looks had one. He's come back fine. Guys come back from this fine, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, whether it's football. And football's the one where I actually have a weird comp. And the more I think about it, the better I think of it. And it's Frank Gore. The last of the battering ram running backs. When he was in college, he tore first his right, then his left. He fell in the draft. He wasn't thought to be durable. And then he played 16 years. And, other than a fractured hip that happened to him in, I want to say, 2016, he barely missed a game. The guy was super, super durable, so much so that, he retired a couple of years ago. His son just signed with the Bills, Frank Gore Jr. So I don't think it tells us anything that this has happened. I don't think Acuña is going to be, having this happen every couple of years. I mean, Manny Machado had 2 knee surgeries early in his career, different ligament, but came back fine. He's had a very good career. I just don't think we can say that this is going to be anything other than successful for Acuña. The problem is he's not going to be playing this year.
Yeah, not playing this year, and of course the second ACL tear, and so it's a little frustrating at least. But of course, you do hope that he comes back as strong as he was before, and that's certainly the expectation, as you were mentioning. Just in the context of the Braves, though, losing him, losing Spencer Strider earlier in the year, they still have a whole lot of depth and a whole lot of talent. But is there any worry about them? Of course, the Phillies have passed them up in the standings, but is there any worry about how they're set up maybe for this year? After this injury here?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, you don't lose an Acuña and not have a big step down. They were okay in 2021 when it happened. That was a weird year for baseball. But, they're a good team without Acuña. They're certainly a better team with him. But their pitching is the problem. Strider's out for the year with Tommy John surgery. He'll get back about the same time as Acuña. So that's 2 nice additions next April. But they've lost A.J. Smith-Shawver with an oblique strain. It's a pretty bad one. They're running out of depth. Also, remember, there was that weird trade with the White Sox where they were basically trying to make some room on the 40-man, and they gave away Mike Soroka and I think it was 3 other players, all pitchers, for Aaron Bummer. And it was basically a roster move. It cleared up space. Soroka has actually been pretty good, not great. But they're running out of pitching. Teams don't have 8, 9, 10 deep with starting pitching without a severe drop-off. And that's true for the Braves. That's true for the Astros. That's true for the Rangers. That's true for a lot of teams that are seeing just numbers of pitchers go down this year.
Meanwhile, Will, when it comes to the St. Louis Cardinals, starting pitching, relatively healthy right now outside of Steven Matz. They're still trying to figure out that number 5 spot. But wanted to ask you about the injury from over the weekend to relief pitcher Nick Robertson going on the IL with elbow inflammation. That's always a concern, but do you know anything specific to Robertson's situation other than they're going to rest him and see how he responds?
Well, they were supposed to have imaging done today. Obviously, holiday, if there wasn't a super need for it, like Ronald Acuña, you wait. So we should have results. Might hear something later today. We're, of course, recording this in the afternoon on Tuesday. So it's one of those situations where we don't have details. But anytime you hear elbow inflammation, you do worry. Because at worst, it's going to be 15 days on the IL. You have those worries about how is he going to come back? How are you going to fit him in? There's always some rotation these days with a bullpen. But when you take somebody out, who steps back in? How many guys at Memphis, at Springfield do you have that can credibly go out there and get guys out day after day after day? And it becomes a vanishingly small number.
Will Carroll, the injury expert, with us here on the Big Show, KTGR and KTGR.com. And then for the Royals side, they've been relatively healthy themselves, but one of their almost everyday players, he's in and out of the lineup at times. Michael Massey is going to be out of the lineup for at least a little bit. He was placed on the IL with a low back strain. I guess that's kind of the interesting part, Will, is that I guess we don't see low back strain all that often. But what in Massey's case do you think he's dealing with here?
Yeah, he's dealing with the same thing he was dealing with at the start of the year is the problem. This is a recurrence. He had that at the start of the year. It held him out for, it was nearly a month. It's one of those situations where that back strain keeps happening. Now, they're saying this is muscular, which is certainly better than a disc or a ligament back there. But the fact that it keeps happening and keeps happening in the same spot, it speaks to either some sort of muscular problem. You don't see guys have that very often. It means everything's basically broken down. The muscle fibers are so scarred that you have to go in there and really repair it. That's very, very uncommon for a back muscle. Usually what it is an imbalance. And you think about things like Smith-Shaver's oblique, and we see so many oblique and intracostals. The game is very one-sided. You swing most of the time in one direction. You throw twisting in one direction. You don't do things the opposite way. So these guys really get out of balance sometimes. And if they're not watching it, if they're not having someone watch it, they'll get very, very one-sided. And that's when you start to see weaknesses and imbalances and it's just bad. And with Massie especially, the recurrence itself is really bad in that location.
Will, when it comes to general pitching injuries across MLB this year, we've talked about how the numbers are high, and recently Major League Baseball saying, the injuries are more likely to occur during spring and early in the season, which I feel like is a notion that you've been on top of as well. And now lately we're hearing, Kodai Senga maybe not loving the way his rehab is going. A lot of pitchers injured across the game. Just kind of where's your stance on that and the way that things are going right now for pitchers across the game? Just not a lot of them healthy.
Yeah, that's the problem is we're just not keeping them healthy. We're not very good at preventing injuries. Can we prevent injuries? I don't know. Can we reduce them at least? Let's try that first. We haven't put a lot of emphasis on it. Major League Baseball talking about that most of them happen in the spring. This will all be fine. Well, that's true for the last 10 years, actually probably the last 50 years. But it stopped being true the last couple years. Things started changing. Some of that is the way that people are dealing with spring training, that we're dealing with ramp-ups a little bit better. But that means the injuries are coming later and later. We saw last year they didn't let off. There's usually this period between early May and late August where it's kind of a Tommy John drought. You love to see it, but we haven't had those the last couple seasons, especially at lower levels. So you'll see double A's and triple A guys. They'll hit that wall where they haven't been pitching this deep in high school and college seasons. They have problems. So this is one of those things. Glenn Fleissig from ASMI has the great analogy that pitching is like smoking. You don't puff one and immediately get lung cancer. It's puffing one and then 10 years later, 20 years later, something bad happens. And we're seeing that over and over quicker and quicker because the velocities are up, the spin is up. These guys are throwing pitches we've never seen before. A scout I talked to a couple weeks ago was saying everybody's Nolan Ryan. They all throw 99 and have a big curveball. And we're seeing more and more of that. Somebody had a 21-inch sweeper. You got moving 21. How do you even hit that? My bat's barely that long. So it's just crazy what these guys are doing. So it's no wonder that if you're doing more, you're going to break down more.
Makes sense. Will Carroll, the injury expert, with us here on the Big Show, KTGR and KTGR.com. Now, Will, one final thing on baseball. We're still a little more than a month away from the draft, but it seems that, the teams are obviously still looking, and they'll get a good look at some of the players that they have an eye on when the regionals start this weekend, with the bracket coming out yesterday in the NCAAs. But there's a pitcher at Arkansas, Hagen Smith, that it appears the Cardinals, even though they're not necessarily way up there in the top 5, they're still a little bit down. It seems that this prospect could potentially fall to them. What are you hearing about Hagen Smith at this point for Arkansas?
Yeah, Hagen Smith is really, really good. And a lot of guys, including the MLB pipeline guys, think he's going to fall down there. There's a couple guys that if you're a Cardinals fan, you should take a really hard look at. That's Chase Burns at Wake Forest. They were one of the top teams last couple of years, and he's one of the big reasons why. Absolutely pure stuff. Doesn't walk anybody, strikes out everybody. He's had some. It's a down year for him, but that's not really a down year. Hagen Smith really jumped up. And we've seen the Cardinals take college pitching a couple years, though they normally haven't been this high. So in a very weird year where it's basically going to be college power drafted for the first 6, 7, 8 guys, it's going to be the same 7 or 8 guys. It's going to be Bazana. It's going to be Condon. It's going to be Callejon. But in what order? We just don't know, because it's going to come down to the fact that they're all pretty much equal. So it's who can Cincinnati get to make the best deal? Who can Cleveland get to make the best deal? The home run leader in Charlie Condon out of Georgia could go number 2 because they might make a better deal, which would mean the Reds would get yet another power-hitting infielder, just what they need. They need some pitching, actually. But the Cardinals are going to end up with a lot of good options down there at 7.
Going to be interesting to watch unfold, and we'll see a lot of those prospects over the next few weeks as the regionals get going here on Friday, and then the College World Series in a couple of weeks after that. Will, what's new at Under the Knife?
We're going to have all the numbers through May. You get to the end of the month, you start counting things up, seeing what happened, and the numbers, sadly, are up. They're way up. Major League Baseball needs to do more. I've been banging that drum for 22 years now, but I'm going to bang it louder, and I'm going to show you all the numbers, who's good, who's bad. There's not much good, and there's a whole lot of bad.
Yeah, so go and check it out, undertheknife.substack.com, to read all of Will Carroll's great injury info inside Major League Baseball, and follow him on Twitter at Injury Expert. Great to have him here on the Big Show, KTGR. Thanks, Will, for coming on. Hope you're well. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks a lot, boys.